So again, thank you for joining us this morning. To tell you why we're here, our mission is to spread dementia awareness and make sure that everyone is aware of Alzheimer's disease and dementia and the impact it has in the community, especially the African American community. So for African Americans, they're twice more likely to be diagnosed with Alzheimer's or a form of dementia. And you'll hear more about the different forms in a little bit by Dr. Bonds Johnson. But it's very important when we go out in the community, so many people don't understand it and don't know what it is. We work with the churches at Faith Village Connections to educate them and to make sure that they're able to support their parishioners, their congregants, and also the community that they serve. And then that is our mission through the education that we are doing. We also have a program which is called Alter, and this is where we formally partner with the churches, and it goes beyond the education. So today's an example of the education that we give, but the Alter program is actually when we partner and we give support and additional resources to churches so they can start on a dementia-friendly journey. And you'll hear more about that later, but I just want to share with you what our mission is, what is our goal, why we are here today. And I guess I should have introduced myself, who I am for those that don't know. I am an assistant professor at Emory University in the School of Nursing. I am the lead for Faith Village Connections and also for the Alter program. I do a lot of research in the community, especially with faith communities, to make sure that they have the resources that they need, that they're participating in the latest research, also that will be able to give the caregivers within their congregation, even those living with dementia, to give them the latest evidence-based tools and interventions and programs. So that's a little bit about me. And I also want to thank everyone for logging in, those that are here that are registered. We will be emailing you gift cards. And for those that have called in, I just asked if you can later on today, if you can call this number 678-723-8188 and just leave your email address so we can send you the gift cards. So again, thank you for being here. And as you see this slide, African American adults and dementia, Dr. Johnson will come in more and talk more about this, and you'll understand a little bit more how important it is for the African American community to be aware of dementia and not just be silent on it. We want to talk about it. We want to remove the shame. We want to make sure we have the tools needed to have a good quality of life while we're on this journey together. And that's also what Ms. Thornton will be talking about a little bit later. So again, thank you all for being here. I'm looking forward to spending the next hour and a half with you where we expand our knowledge. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kalisha Bonds Johnson. I am a postdoctoral fellow in the School of Nursing at Emory University, and I am presenting an overview of dementia. Next slide, please. So research from the Alzheimer's Association suggests that African American older adults are twice as likely to develop Alzheimer's disease and other related dementias, and we'll get into those a little bit later, when compared to non-Hispanic white older adults. The risk is associated with African American older adults having higher rates of high blood pressure, stroke, and diabetes, and Alzheimer's disease is more common in women. But this may be linked to the fact that women live longer than men. There is some research in the area to look at other factors as to why Alzheimer's disease is more common in women. Alzheimer's disease is the 5th leading cause of death in individuals over the age of 65 and the 6th leading cause of death for all adults. Alzheimer's disease and related dementias are very costly, both to the economy or society, but more importantly to the family and friends who assist with caring for someone who has this diagnosis. Next slide, please. So what is dementia? Dementia is described by a set of symptoms that result in a loss of cognitive functioning and behavioral abilities to such an extent that it interferes with a person's ability to care for oneself. This inability to take care of daily activities is a result of changes in the brain. Next slide, please. Dementia is an umbrella term, or as I like to call it, a catch-all term. Dementia is a term used to describe the many types of dementias, such as Alzheimer's disease, vascular dementia, Lewy bodies dementia, and frontotemporal dementia, which are the more common types, and you can see the percentages listed here. Next slide, please. Earlier, I gave a broader description of dementia as an inability to care for oneself or to complete activities of daily living, such as cooking, cleaning, and bathing. But more specifically, symptoms of dementia include memory loss, the inability to speak or sometimes find words, hallucinations and delusions, no longer being able to manage one's finances, an inability to focus, and personality changes. For example, someone who maybe never cursed before a diagnosis of dementia may curse every breath now, or someone who was very calm and sweet may be more aggressive when you see them now. Next slide, please. In this slide, we highlight different parts of the brain and what functions these parts are responsible for. For example, you see the frontal lobe is responsible for executive functioning, thinking, and personality. So with frontotemporal dementia, we often see personality changes. Another example is the motor cortex, which is responsible for movement and is affected in Parkinson's dementia. Given that different parts of the brain have unique functions, older adults who present with dementia may exhibit somewhat different symptoms, which makes diagnosing and treating dementia challenging. Next slide, please. Dementia is a spectrum or a trajectory. Research suggests that dementia is developing years before the diagnosis, and you can sort of see that represented in this spectrum of dementia figure. You will notice that during the preclinical diagnosis phase and mild cognitive impairment, that the symptoms of dementia seem to mainly plateau. But once diagnosed with mild dementia or developing mild dementia symptoms, the progression to moderate and severe dementia is a steeper curve and tends to happen faster. Of course, this is an average, and the dementia trajectory is different for each person, but what is most important is recognizing dementia symptoms sooner rather than later. Next slide, please. So it's important to know what symptoms may or may not be related to dementia. There are common conditions that mimic dementia symptoms, and I say mimic because these conditions can cause forgetfulness, poor concentration, and personality changes, but typically do not have the progressive decline that we often see with a dementia diagnosis. So for example, with depression, you can have some forgetfulness. Alcohol and drug abuse definitely can cause personality changes. Traumas, especially any trauma to the head, can result in forgetfulness, but we often don't see that prolonged progression that we see with dementia. Next slide, please. So what are the next steps? Is someone showing signs of dementia? If no, we want to continue the 4 components of healthy living that everyone should be doing, or that's good for everyone at least, which is brain engagement, social engagement, diet and nutrition, and exercise. So when we think about brain engagement, it's puzzles, board games, learning a new skill like a second language or a musical instrument, online games. I know we're not necessarily doing a lot of driving, but even, if you think about the monotonous drive to and from work, if you make one turn different, then that actually helps stimulate brain function and get an engagement if you're still driving. Social engagement, attending social events. Of course, with COVID right now, this is a little more challenging, but attending live webinars and visiting with friends and family through technology, or even just visiting with people within your own home, just continuing to stay socially engaged is important. Diet and nutrition, of course, a balanced diet with vegetables, fruit, whole grains, low-fat dairy products, and lean protein foods is important. Limiting foods with high saturated fat and cholesterol, cutting down on refined sugars, and limiting foods with high sodium, or just using less salt can be helpful. And then, of course, exercise. So 30 minutes a day, walking or doing some chair exercises. I know YouTube has a lot of great ideas. There's even like yoga that on YouTube and other types of exercise. But what if someone is showing signs of dementia? Then we recommend making an appointment with your healthcare provider. So your primary care provider or your PCP, a geriatrician or a neurologist. Next slide, please. So medications. I worked as a nurse practitioner in nursing homes and assisted livings. And in my experience, medication can make a difference in some symptoms. Of course, there are no medications that will stop the progression of dementia, but there are some medications that can help with certain symptoms. Or other medications can be helpful. For example, I have had residents who were depressed because of their dementia diagnosis and benefited from taking an antidepressant. I have also had residents who had very disturbing hallucinations and delusions, and I prescribed a low-dose antipsychotic, which improved their quality of life. Prescribing medications for a person living with dementia is a delicate balance and a decision that sometimes requires multiple conversations to ensure the family and the resident were okay with that decision. Next slide, please. So how is dementia diagnosed? There are no definitive tests, but most providers use a combination of information to determine the diagnosis. And memory screenings are one of the components of this process. Memory screenings are important because they allow for early detection, which can give the older adult and family time to plan for the future, to help with making sure the person living with dementia's values and preferences are honored. I would also add that you may have to request a memory screening as sometimes they are not commonly offered, especially if you're referring to your PCP or your primary care physician. We know that primary care doctors know a lot about everything, and so because they're not specialized, sometimes you may have to push a little bit about getting a memory screening from your primary care doctor. Next slide, please. So do we have any questions? Thank you for your time. I'm here to answer a few questions. I know we're in the process of transition, so if there are any, feel free, or you can hold them to the end. Thank you.
I have a question, Dr. Johnson. While we're getting ready to, since you said that you work as a practitioner in the clinic, are there any common problems or any common theme that you've seen, patterns that you're seeing with families that come in that you think we should address that was not addressed in the slides?
When it comes to medications or just period?
Overall.
I think one thing I have noticed, especially as my grandmother is getting older, so again, is that she is not pushy. She does not recognize that she is the consumer, and that when you have questions and you don't feel like your questions are met or they don't seem to be addressed, she'll just say, oh, it's okay. Or if she doesn't like a primary care provider, she'll say, well, you know, it's okay. It's not okay. Like, you need to feel very comfortable in the setting with whoever is taking care of you, regardless of what that diagnosis may be. And especially when it comes to dementia, because it is so variable across patients and older adults. And so I think it's important to know that you are your own advocate sometimes, and you have to sometimes be a little pushy if you don't feel like your needs are being met. And I see a question just came in about antipsychotics. How do you balance the risk and benefits of prescribing antipsychotics? So antipsychotics are tough in older adults with dementia because there's a black box warning. And what that means is that basically in a nutshell, these medications can have some adverse effects on individuals, even leading to death. So I think how I balance it, one, is the person truly psychotic? So are they having delusions or hallucinations that are so detrimental to their health right now that prescribing a medication is helpful? So I had a resident years ago who was in the nursing home and thought she was being raped. And we went through all of the appropriate channels. She described this person, this male. There were no men that worked on that unit. There was no one that looked like that. So after we went through like the proper police precautions and things like that, it was then a discussion with the family because she was distraught. Every visit I had, every visit the family had, she kept replaying this rape that was occurring, she felt like present day. And for her, it was that we needed to do something now. And in spite of that black box warning, we needed to prescribe a low dose. So I went in very low with an antipsychotic. And each week when I was at that facility, I would just say, how are you doing? And before the medication, it was always about this incident, this sexual incident that was very disturbing to her. And then as the weeks went by and the weeks went by and the weeks went by, it was, oh, I'm having a lovely day. How are you? And so it really did change her quality of life, but that is a tough one. And so you do have to weigh sort of the side effects of medication with the experiences of what is actually going on with that person at the time.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think that led to another question that someone was saying, like, when you have this agitation behavior, what are things that we can do without giving medicine? And I think one of the things is really knowing, getting a full history on that person or that patient if you're in a clinical setting, and know the things that they enjoy. I do a lot of work with meaningful engagement, meaningful in activities, and there's so much, especially with music. Everybody just music has been very helpful. So this is a non-pharmacological intervention or something that you can do that does not involve medicine that has shown positive results. If they were a very religious person and they always was in the church, just connecting them to things that they enjoy could be some ways to decrease the agitation. So I know we have to move on and the questions are coming in. So Mia, if you can just keep a tally of the questions so we can also address it in the back. And I do see one thing to make sure that we do address is, for sure, if you start seeing signs and symptoms in someone, but they do not want to acknowledge that they have dementia. Dr. Johnson, take us out with that one, because I know you probably deal with this a lot.
You know, I am personally dealing with this in a sense that my grandmother is getting older. And so, you know, she will rebuke me in the name of Jesus if I tell her that she has anything like a dementia symptom. And so it is a very delicate balance with her. And so what I have just started doing is because I'm equipped to do a memory test, I do a memory test with her. I think sometimes we as individuals get so caught up on a diagnosis and as a provider saying, well, you have this diagnosis, that we forget that it's not necessarily about labeling someone, it's about getting them the help they need based on their symptoms. And so sometimes it's easier to just say, well, so-and-so, well, loved one, family member, I've noticed that this is happening, and having a discussion that way instead of labeling, saying, oh, I think you have dementia, because sometimes when we label things for people, it is harder for them to digest it and accept it versus just calling out certain symptoms that we're noticing. And it may be that you have to have that discussion with the provider to say, we don't use that diagnosis in front of my family member. We just discuss things in terms of what symptoms are.
Oh, that's a good point. Thank you. And so on this slide that you all see, we do Faith Village Connections puts out a monthly newsletter. And also, if you're interested in learning about some of the faith-based research that we do in the caregiving interventions, please feel free to call this number 404-549-4504, or you can send us an email at faithvillage@emory.edu, and I'll make sure I put this in the chat box. And in the conclusion of our session, you will also receive a survey that you can put this information in, and then we'll make sure that we follow up with you. We're also on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. If you want to, we put up at least 3 posts a week about educational things that churches can do to support their congregants through this journey. So if you're on any social media platform, please do follow us and look out for our new altered dementia platforms that will be coming out. So next slide. I do want to say, before Ms. Thornton comes up to talk about care partners and who's in our Dementia Huddle, I do want to let you all know that I am actively recruiting for a study where we're looking for families that are experiencing memory loss, that you're caring for someone with memory loss. You do not have to have a diagnosis of dementia, going back to what Dr. Johnson said. Sometimes that diagnosis is just too much, but if you're experiencing signs and symptoms of memory loss, or someone is, and they're not able to get to church, I've worked with one of the churches that is dementia friendly, and we design tailored dementia friendly online worship services, and they're about 10 minutes long. And we're asking families to give us feedback to see if it works, and they will watch them weekly over 6 weeks. And it's not every Sunday, it's whatever your schedule works. So if it's a Wednesday at 10 o'clock in the morning, that's what it will be. And that's when you'll watch the services. So if you're interested in learning more about this, or know of anyone else that may be interested, please give us a call, reach out. And again, I'll put the numbers in the chat box. So now let's get ready to learn about who's in our Dementia Huddle. So I will turn it over to Jackie Thornton. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Epps, Dr. Johnson, fantastic presentation. Thank you, Mia and Adrienne, both of you, for all that you do to make these seminars possible. Can you hear me very well? Because sometimes I speak a little bit lower. So I'm excited to bring you this topic on who's in your dementia care huddle, specifically for you to be able to get from the point of doing it all yourself and developing your team for the extraordinary work that you're either already in or getting ready for. Next slide, please. So we have a Sage Talk series out of Sage Navigator and Faith Village Connections with Alter in partnership with AARP are putting this on with you today to be able to share what we can offer in terms of solutions to better navigate the resources that you need, find and tap into those resources that you need in order to be better care partners, moving from what is going to be on your next slide. One more for me. How to change your terminology. So this is a big one. In caregiving and in caretaking, which we've heard for many years, all have heard these different terms, words really matter. And in the care realm, I want you all to begin to think of new ways to pivot your language, and I'm going to give you a guidebook. If you will, maybe not toggle right now, but I want you to jot down your notes. You know, Adrienne said you're going to be getting a lot of really great tips, so we want you to be able to jot these things down. In your notes, there is an organization called DAANOW, so DAAnow.org, and they have a wonderful Words Matter document that is going to be essential for your care partner team, essential for any caregiver, whether you're caring for someone who's living with dementia or any other diagnosis. So I want to be really clear that these are the type of things that are really important for your toolkit. And that's what we're going to be doing today, is building your toolkit, getting you ready for being a phenomenal care partner. Back in the day, what we used to hear in terms of who the language that we would use for the person that's providing care often was the term caretaker. Okay, all agree? Anybody with me? Everybody remember that? And we start moving away from that because the caretaker, we weren't trying to take care from the care receiver. We were actually trying to give care. Yes? Okay. In giving care, what we found, the negative and the con in that is that the individual care giving starts to empty out, and it reduces and it diminishes their own self-care. So we started looking at what is it that we're really trying to achieve. We're trying to achieve a care partner team. That is essentially what we want to do. So let's move to the next slide. We're going to teach you how to do that today. Let's go back a couple, if you don't mind, Mia. I want to go back to that. There we go. Over here to the right, and you may have to move the image of myself or Dr. Epps or whoever is showing on your screen. There is up in this corner, right-hand corner, a diagram. And the person in the middle is the care receiver. It's the care partner that is closest to the care receiver. And then you have all of these other phenomenal persons that are in your realm, your circle, volunteers, family members. It could be even healthcare partners. You have folks like home health that are both professional, paid, and then what we call informal family care partners. And then we also have individuals in organizations like Sage Navigator, Leading Age Georgia, Alter, Emory University, all of these different collages of folks that are supporting us in our care. But that care needs to be fluid, right? Everyone should be giving and taking. And so a care partner team, when it's functioning well, you'll see that the care is not only for the individual with a diagnosis, not just the care receiver, it's for everyone on the team. And so that's what we'll be teaching today. So let's go ahead and move forward. Let's get started. What we want to do is, one, create a true care partner team. And here are some of the benefits. We're going to reduce burnout for the care members, care partner team, and we're going to improve outcomes for the care receiver. But to do that, there's some essentials that we have to have happen. There's some to-dos on both sides of this list. What's really, really incredibly important is that everyone on the care partner team, I want to make sure that we are evaluating what's in it for them. This can't be one-sided. Otherwise, the person that is the care receiver may feel like they are a burden on the team, right? We all need a role. What's also important is that once we identify what's in it for each of the individuals, we want it to be an exercise that we do regularly, because things change, right? If you've ever been a care partner, or if you're a care partner now, you know that your needs in terms of this care partner group evolves over time, especially when you're caring for someone living with dementia. If it's of the Alzheimer's type, we've already heard from Dr. Johnson, this could be a process that lasts 10 to 20 years, right? You may be in this group of care partnering for a long period of time. Let's incorporate the care receiver as the most valuable player in the care team. They need to be contributing also. What I find oftentimes in care partners, we are so ready to give care, and we're so ready to do everything for the person. We don't leave room for the person to have space to give back and to do the things that they can do. We want to prolong their independence for the things that they can do for as long as possible. So if there are things around the house, so maybe they're not as mobile as they were, but maybe they like to still bake, and they can still have a part in the baking of that special recipe every other night. Maybe if they still can do laundry, or they can still fold clothes, you can't imagine how empowering it is when you're able to do things for yourself. And we don't want to take everything from them just because it's easier for the care partner team to do it for them. Yeah. So let's be mindful of that. So here is what I want to go to next. This is the next slide. When you're approaching people to be on your care partner team, what you need to be thinking about in terms of the care group is, what are the things that are critical? What are the things that have to be done and that you can give up as the primary care partner? The most important thing that we need to stress is reaching out to people to help them come on the team. No phenomenal team is a winning team without many members on the team. And I'm going to suggest, and you'll hear this several times during the process, that a care partner team works best and most efficiently when there are 8 to 10 people on the team. And I'll show you how you can build that team. You may be wondering, hey, I'm in town. No one else lives in close proximity to me that's in the family. And it's just me, my care person that I'm caring with and for, and one other member in my family. So Jackie, I can't do this. And I venture to bet that you can, and you can find those folks. When you actually select those people, what's important for them to know is that they're not doing all this work by themselves, and you're not doing all this work by yourself. You're doing it as a team. And you need to be sure to let folks know that they're not going to do things that they're not good at. They're not going to do things that they're afraid of doing. And they're simply not going to be asked to do things that they don't want to do. And those are the things that you have to assure the team. So let's go to the roadmap. Before I start talking about this roadmap, I do want to give you some examples. If it's a son that's caring for a mother, some of the things that the mom may not be receptive of and may battle in care, or like during bathing time. Oftentimes, a son does not want to bathe the mother, or the mother does not want to be bathed by a son, right? Just for dignity, didn't ever see themselves coming to these role reversals and just don't want to do it. But there are people in that son's life that he could reach out to, that mom wouldn't battle with if we're helping to find the right match. Maybe the mom would prefer a female family member, or a female, could be a nurse, a CNA, it could be a family member, it could be a best friend that would be a better match. So those are the kind of things that you need to be thinking through, are what are the things that create battle and strife with your care receiver, and finding out who are the right matches for them for this care, even if you want to do it. But if they're giving you a battle, that's a symptom and a sign. You're just not the right person for that role, but there are other roles that you can play. So let's look at this roadmap to build a care partner team. I want us to just pause for a moment, and I want you to jot down, and I'm going to just throw out, because this screen is maybe tiny if you're looking using your mobile device for this presentation. And I don't think we can get that any larger, can we, Mia? And if not, what I want to do is just throw out some of these that will be helpful. People that are in your 6 degrees of separation that can be a part of your team. Could be family members. I want you to write down right now 2 to 3 family members that could be a part of your care partner team that you can start recruiting. I want you to think of friends. I want you to think of congregation church members that can be a part of your care partner team. I want you to think of people, even if you're retired, there's still people you keep in contact with that are from your past careers, I want you to jot down 1 or 2 of those people. Now just think, just now, if you've written down 3 to 8 names, you've already begun to build your team. Look how fast and easy that is. This is just about actually sitting down and taking the time to do it. So here's what I want you to be thinking about. Use your diagram to illustrate how to build your team. I want you to, with your team and notes, I want you to start thinking about who and what is the time frame of commitment you want to ask them to serve, right? So you might be building this roadmap of success once every year, right? So that you don't have burnout of your team. I want you to begin assessing the care receiver's needs. You know, what's their mental and physical status during their progression through dementia? I want you to choose leaders for each facet of the care so that you're not always the one that's in lead. You're not always the one in charge, and that this leadership role transitions from one to another, and that you choose a coordinator. Now, choosing a coordinator is key. Dr. Epps will remember in our recent care partnership with a dear friend and colleague, my sister, my soror, Tanya Miller. And in her care, when she was in the hospital, there was one niece that kept and coordinated the schedule for rotations to come and visit her at the hospital. And this coordinator kept our schedule weekly. So every Sunday, the entire care team received a calendar of who was going to be taking the lead, who was going to be at the hospital at every single point. Zandra Matthews, who's our board chair for Sage Navigator, who's a prayer warrior, like my mom, they would actually take their turns together. My dad would actually be the person that would take care of transportation for those 2 care partners to get them to the hospital. But they were the ones that would go in and do reading and prayer and just all kinds of ways to keep her engaged just where she was, right? So that meant that the care team partner, that coordinator who actually put together the schedule, that really is all that person had to do. Because there were all these other people we were plugging into the actual delivery of care. And so we actually want to actually think about who is that person in your life that is the quintessential planner. They do all things in order. They have every kind of form, facet possible to keep everyone on schedule and engaged. That's the kind of care coordinator you need. Don't ignore part-time care partners, latecomers, people who live far away. There's still a role for them to play. So let's go to the next slide. The care partner system is so essential, right? Having lived this, I can just tell you, this system will change your life, and it will teach every person in the group how to create the same for themselves. One really important thing, ensure you have the right person for each job. That's going to be critically important. Include a role for the care receiver. Again, I keep saying that. We are typically people who feel like we need to be independent. We've been taught to be independent. And when those semblances of independence starts to wane away, we feel like we're a burden to the people that are supporting us. Always create a role for the care receiver until they cannot participate. The most important thing that we don't want the care receiver to deal with is logistics. That should be someone else on the care partner team. If there are group issues, we do not want to have conversations about the group issues, personality clashes. We know we're talking about human beings here. There's going to be disagreement at times, right? There's going to be disagreement about the care, about the next step in the planning process. So make sure the care receiver isn't a part of that conversation, right? We want to help them to get to the point where they are truly able to heal and truly able to have their best life, best quality of life, no matter where they are in their stage of dementia. Beginning, moderate, mid-stage, late stage. Okay, next slide. So here's a fabulous picture of Zondra's care partner team, and two in which have been on my care partner team when I was caring for our uncle who was living with dementia, erroneously diagnosed as Alzheimer's type, later appropriately diagnosed with vascular dementia. And up in the left part of the screen, you'll see one woman with braids there. Sarah is a psych nurse, but she trained in the military and had exceptional wound care experience. And I called Zondra when I realized Uncle Robert's leg wasn't healing, and his wife had been caring for that leg on a visit, we found out, for almost a year. And I was like, there's no way you all can go back to Virginia. And before you go, I've got to have someone take a look at your leg. Zondra called Sarah, and within 2 hours, Sarah was at my house and teaching us how to actually do the wound care and bandaging appropriately. So this is like the kind of things that folks that may not be full-time in your care partner team, but have an essential skill that they can lend to you to do exceptional things that you can't do and teach you how to do it well. So there's 7 guiding principles to hold this team together in good times, and I add in challenging times. Next slide. Sharing responsibility is the most important thing we need to remember in order not to burn out as a care partner. We are moving away from caregiving. X that out of your vocabulary. You're a care partner now, and this is what you got to do. You got to share the responsibility. No one person should be charged with all of the responsibility. No one person should have to deal with every crisis, and no one has to be on call every single day. I'm a living testament that it can be done. You have 7 days in a week, and they start with Sundays. So you might start with all of your care partners that you just jot down that are in your faith community to be able to lend their support on Sundays to give you time for respite. And respite, often people think that respite is for the care receiver. It's actually for the care partners. No one person should have to make all of the decisions all the time, right? That's why you have a care partner team. That's why you have different leaders for different jobs, so that everyone shares this broadly. And no one person should have to run their life plus someone else's 100% of the time. Let others share in the care. They want to, and honestly, they need to. Next slide. Principle number 2, it really won't work unless everyone gains something personally. And I don't think this meme is showing everything, but let's go to the next slide. See how those wheels turn? Everyone has an independent role, but they're also connected in their role, and they're working together. And that's how that care partner team, that huddle, is going to work efficiently. So this next slide is, I want you to let things go that you have no business doing, right? Or that you're too tired to do anymore. Start finding people that are actually able and capable to get it done. Recognize the importance of personal rewards. The patient or the person living with dementia will feel too guilty if you have nothing to gain in this experience. So let's let some things go. Principle number 3. Next slide. Know your limits and stick to them. Okay? Principle number 4. Next slide. Whatever you can do to help, it really is enough. If you can't or don't want to do something, don't do it, right? because someone else who is probably exceptional at doing it and loves to do it, it gives them that opportunity, and it gives you respite and time to yourself. Next slide, 5. Principle 5, anyone who wants to help should be encouraged to. So let's think about that. If there are 10 members on your care team, just think about it. There'll be 10 or 15 different ways to do it, right? That's okay. It's really okay. Let's go to the next slide. What we want to do is to make sure that every person on the team gets an opportunity to tap into the support. Anyone who wants to help is encouraged to. And there will be people who will raise their hands and not show up. Amen to that. Everybody had that experience before. But you always, if you have a care partner team that's 8 to 10 wide in your huddle, you can tap others. And when you have to fill in, you don't feel like you're alone. You have other support. So principle number 6. Trust the care partner team and support one another. A care partnership needs to be, again, 8 to 10 people. If the main care partner, or is not a blood relative, broaden your search. We really want to look for people that are not just blood relatives. They're not always the best on the team, correct? I mean, anybody amen on that? Include free-floating people who can really do this work with you. And we'll go on to the next slide. Let's see if I can get there. Trust the care partner team, support each other. And the way you do that is to make sure that each person that's on this team that came with hey, this is what I'm getting out of it, right? They came with their needs and expectations, that we're supporting them where they are. Now, what will happen and I can attest to this. If you have care partners on your team, there will be times where they cannot fulfill, right? They will have an urgency or an emergency that crops up. They may have work related that keeps them from actually participating in a role and needs to step or roll out. Are my slides lagging? Should be on.
We're on principle 7.
Okay.
And I think you're still speaking on principle 6. I just didn't know if you're still seeing the slide for principle 6.
Okay. Well, I'll move on to 7.
It's okay.
I'll move on to 7.
Good stuff.
Okay. It happens sometimes. So what the most essential thing I want you to remember is that the care partners, everyone in the care partner team, before I move on to 7, is that everyone has their own families, right? They have their own life. So what we have to do, and it's essential for them, is to be able to have their own care partner team, right? So you have a care partner team for this care receiver, this person that's living with dementia that you really want to be able to support, but you also have your own life. And so you want to be able to build your own, you as the care receiver, having others to support you. So I'll give you an example. When I was going to the hospital on a weekly basis, 2-3 times a week, and I was staying overnight with my dear friend and sister, right? There were times where I was missing out on family things that I should have been taken care of. And what happened is that my daughter took up the rear for me, right? And when I would get home at 8:30 in the morning after being in a hospital all night long, when I got there, she put breakfast in front of me, right? So that I could be cared for too. And so this thing is cyclical. It is passing the baton one to another, is supporting each other where we need you. And so we'll go on to 7, where you all have been, and I'm catching up to, is we're all here for one another. You know, we've got to be able to keep our own life working and going well and striving and doing and still meeting, our own deliverables in our own lives in terms of work, play, family, spouses. All of this is critically important. We need for you to go, we'll go to the next slide. We need for you to take care of yourself, right? We need you to exercise. We need you to rest. We need you to stay in life. We need you to lighten the rest of your load. And the care partner team, creating your huddle, helps you to do that. Next slide. So let's get started, right? The way we're going to get started, and we've just begun the process, is for you to use your roadmap, number one. And number 2, you're going to change your words, your language, right? No longer caretaking, no longer caregiving. Now you're your care partner. Next slide. So here are some resources. And I think our dear friend and colleague may be on the line, Kay Sabetta. She's going to speak a little bit about AARP's Prepare to Care. Before she gets started, I want you to kind of see, can you all see that? So this one is mine. I filled it all out. These are essential documents that you need in your toolkit. Next slide. Other things that you need in your toolkit are things like online. There's a Leading Age. There's Empower Line through ARC. There's getting your getting your advanced directives documents. And I'm showing you this yellow dot, but it's not so much to show you about yellow dot as it is the documents for your toolkit are going to be critically important for you, are things like having the emergency information in one place for all care partners to be able to access. This is not necessarily available for, putting it in a folder like such, putting all those essential advanced directives and whoever your power of attorney is, putting all those documents somewhere in the same place that every care partner knows is in the house. Maybe it's in a drawer next to the refrigerator. Maybe it's in a glove compartment of the car of the person that transports the care receiver the most. Having all those essential documents in one place. All right, got that. Another document is Share the Care. This is a prototype of this book. If you go to the next slide, there are links for you, and we'll be sharing those links so that you can actually go directly to the Amazon page to click and order and purchase these documents. It's easy reads. If you want to create a care partner team at your church, and say that you're not a care partner, but you're a great educator and maybe a church leader, faith leader, and you want to create a connections group to teach these principles on how to create the team for yourself, or if you want Sage Navigator, want us to come out and do that for you. That's the kind of work that we want to do in the community. Next slide. So I want to thank everyone. My name is Jackie Thornton. My phone number and contact information is there. I want you to huddle with your team daily. If you can't do it daily, do it once a week. Maybe it'll be on Sunday. Next slide. And for your own care, I want you all to consider joining us for our next Sage Talk series. This wonderful book, Intentional Mindfulness, will be taught by Zandra Matthews. And as you see, I've actually completed mine. It's a 30-day journey on how to be able to care for yourself. How to stay in the moment as your care partner is critically important. Not to get so ahead of thinking of all the things that you got to do tomorrow, all the plethora of things that you got to do when you wake up, but to be able to be in the moment and have some self-care. Next slide. That's it for me. I want to thank everyone for this opportunity, and the registration link, we'll put that in there for you as we chat, and I'll hand it back over. I think, am I passing the baton to our dear friend, Kate Zabetta?
Yeah, so thank you so much, Jackie. I really appreciate that. That was really some good tips. Very, very good tips. And, you brought up some good points that I see we have some questions about in our chat that we'll talk about a little bit afterwards about accuracy of diagnosis. And I also want us to go back on about that trust again, trusting others,
Yeah.
It's hard for us to trust people, period. But when you're in the care partner team, you really have to trust. And I want us to kind of discuss that. But for time's sake, I will go ahead and let Kay come in and speak about AARP and the Prepare to Care Guide, and then we can loop back to those questions. So Kay, I would turn it over to you. We are recording, so this can be available for those who could not make it on our YouTube channel. And we also are also on Facebook Live.
Good morning. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Thank you so much for inviting me on behalf of AARP Georgia. If I may share my slides, I wanted to share a brief video. I think it's about a minute long about our family caregiving. And then I have, I think, 3 slides just to kind of summarize. And let me know if you see this. Need to. Let me know if you see that. Share. Do you see our website?
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Okay, great. So I'm going to click on the Prepare to Care. This is the best resource for you to go to, aarp.org/caregiving /prepare to care. We have tons of information, and I believe that after the webinar, you will be getting a link to be able to download your Prepare to Care guide that we've provided, and another one-sheet document, one-pager on preparedness for caregiving during COVID, because we're in a pandemic, and I know my colleagues and partners have spoken briefly about that. So here we go.
Hi, I'm Amy Goyer, AARP's family caregiving expert. Are you caring for family members or friends, or do you think you may be in the future? Maybe you're just beginning to anticipate a need, or helping to coordinate a big move, or taking care of a family member full time. It can feel overwhelming. That's why AARP has created the free Prepare to Care guide to help ease your caregiving journey in 5 basic steps. The first step is to start the conversation. Have those key discussions with your loved ones about their present and future care. The second step is to form your team. I've learned that I can do anything, but I cannot do everything. So it's important to build a strong team of relatives, friends, neighbors, volunteers, and other helpers. The third step is to make a plan, a framework you can adjust over time that outlines goals, needs, resources, and who will take on caregiving tasks. The fourth step is to find support from other caregivers and professionals who can give you guidance and also much needed moral support. The fifth step is so important. Take care of yourself. Caregiving can be joyful and draining too. I know my car can't run on empty, and I've realized that I can't either. It's not selfish, it's just practical to take care of ourselves. You'll find details about how to accomplish each of these 5 steps in AARP's Prepare to Care Guide, which includes checklists, a sample caregiving plan, a list of resources, and so much more. At aarp.org/prepare to care, you'll find different versions of the Prepare to Care Guide tailored to fit your needs. The guides are available in various languages, such as English, Spanish, Chinese, and more. And there's a guide tailored for veterans and one for the LGBT community as well. Visit aarp.org/prepare to care, where you can download your guides to your computer. If you would prefer a print copy of the guide, we would love to mail you one. Simply fill out the form on the website or call us at 1-877-333-5885 and select option 1. The guide will arrive within 10 business days. Thank you for all you do to take care of your family and friends.
Thank you, everybody, for your attention. I'm going to get out of here on this slide. Oops. And really quickly, just summarizing the 5 steps, the starting the conversation, forming your team, making a plan, finding the support, and very important, taking care of ourselves. I apologize. I think everybody is online with the video was stopping and skipping there. I apologize about that. It's just one of those things. I have the phone number, the 877-333-5885. We know there's a digital divide and not everybody can get online for you to be able to get your free copy. Thank you so much for your attention, and we look forward to working with you. Take care.
Thanks so much, Kay, for that. And I did put that number in the chat. Because that's a great option. I know some people, even if they can get online to the guide, it is a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, and so they might prefer to, some people just still like that paper copy.
Yes, yes.
So I think that's a great option. So thank you. I didn't know about that option to having it mailed to you.
Yeah, and I am, as I'm talking to you, I am trying to not share.
Oh, okay. Let me see if I can help you out.
Get me to be in.
So as Kay figures out how to stop sharing, there, thank you. So now we have our panelists, and now we can open up to questions. And so, Mia, I will turn it over to you to help moderate the questions, and then I'll come back in toward the end.
All right, sounds good. So I hope everyone has some questions, some burning questions from the presentation. I'm sure there are a lot of things that came up that just got your wheels turning, and we really want people to consider, starting their care partner team. So right now we're going to address some of the questions that you have, and I want to remind you, you can put your questions in the chat box, but I'll pick up where we left off. So Dr. Bonds-Johnson, this is actually for you, and it's a question from Facebook. Many times patients are giving Haldol or Ativan to calm them down. Are there any tips to assist a agitated person living with dementia?
Yes. So unfortunately, we as providers, and I'll put myself in that category, give medicine what we consider off-label. So technically Ativan is for anxiety, and it's short term. So like if you're having a panic attack or if you have performance anxiety, so it's really only to target like intermittent episodes of anxiety. Haldol is an old school antipsychotic, one of the first, and actually is really good. But again, the idea of antipsychotic means the person should actually have psychosis. So they should have delusions, or they should be actively hallucinating, which is where they're seeing things that aren't there or hearing things that aren't there, or delusional in the sense of the example I gave earlier, where the woman thought she was being sexually attacked and wasn't. Unfortunately, these medicines, because they have the ability to sedate someone, we use them in an inappropriate manner. So someone who's agitated, I don't recommend using an Haldol or an anxiolytic like an Ativan, because a lot of times there's going to be negative effects with that. It would be better, as Dr. Epps was pointing to figure out why someone is aggressive or agitated. Is it that they're bored? Do you want to have them fold clothes like Miss Jackie was mentioning? I've had some residents, one man was an engineer. So we had this neat little box that had little keys and locks on it. So we gave him things to help him. So I think the key with agitation is figuring out what this person enjoyed doing, and is there a way to adapt what they enjoy doing to an activity we can do now. The problem though is when you're in a lot of nursing homes or assisted living, people want a quick fix, and so medications can be a quick fix, but they're really not a great long-term fix. And I hope that helps. As far as being a family member, the one thing you can do is say that you don't want your family member to receive this medication, that you would prefer other options, and see if those providers can give you other options. And if they can't, it may be that you need a new provider.
Okay. And so Dr. Johnson, would you also agree that it's a good idea to identify what's causing the agitation? Because maybe that's something that can also be corrected or fixed?
Of course.
Yeah.
Agree. It could be that they don't like who's providing care to them, or the person has cold hands, or, that they don't speak to them when they come in, or, in our community, we really like to be called Mr. and Mrs. And maybe this person is calling them by their first name. So it really is taking the time to figure out what's going on and leading up to it, and not just assuming, it's their dementia, it's their, we need to give them medicine. So yes, I definitely agree with that.
Great. All right, so our next question is, and I'm sure all of our panelists can jump in on this. What do you suggest to a family member of a person who has or is showing definite signs and symptoms of dementia, but they don't want to acknowledge that they have it? So Jackie, do you want to start off on this one?
Sure. So, who is it important to? Number one, if the person isn't ready to receive the diagnosis, they're not ready, but what you can do is start exercises and start talking about ways to support them where they are, if they're having challenges remembering things, you might start using sticky notes, as reminders. Start using those tools in your toolkit to reach the person where they are. Getting the diagnosis early is important, but the more seminars, I think one of the best seminars we offer is that 2-hour session, now that we've broken down, I think, into 45 minutes, that, really helps people to just understand what memory loss is. And sometimes it's things that, you can do to overcome it. I have to do my, I got to put a plug for my AARP cup here, but inside of here is my B12. I have to have it every morning. It helps me to think better. And sometimes that's it. It may be a UTI, start taking them to the doctor to get all of the exams, and to make sure that if they're a person that is aging, say they're 62 or older, maybe they should start seeing a geriatrician that has a different set and battery of exams and diagnostics that they do that would include a mini mental, so that we can get the person in the care, getting the different assessments that they need for where they are in their life.
Yeah. And I think Dr. Johnson had mentioned earlier as well, that's good points, Dr. Thornton, but also for us to think about not using the word dementia,
Yes.
us acknowledging these signs and symptoms and getting assistance for these signs and symptoms, but not to go so overboard. Is that what you were saying, Dr. Johnson? Like you having the diagnosis or using the word Alzheimer's disease or dementia, don't make that the priority, because our priority is to care for this person, acknowledging these signs and symptoms and putting things in place to help them. Did I sum that up right?
You did it great, because the reality is there's such a huge stigma when you say Alzheimer's disease or dementia. Of course, if the care partner team is having a discussion, it's fine to use that language, but I think we need to remember how that care receiver is going to feel. And it's more about, as Ms. Jackie was pointing out, how do we give them good quality of life now? Like, who really cares what the diagnosis means other than the insurance company that is paying for some bills? When I'm talking to you on a, really, like when I'm talking to you on a day-to-day basis, it's more about, I noticed that, I put this sticky note up here, did you see it? So it's more about working through those signs and symptoms than it is about saying, oh, well, you have dementia, you have this. That's less important, I think, when it comes to quality of life.
I want to correct. We're not saying don't get a diagnosis.
That's right.
We're just saying don't keep throwing it
Right.
in someone's face. And
Yes.
it's sometimes that those words and those terms, because of the stigma that's associated with it, you don't get good outcomes when you're trying to implement things that you've learned from this webinar. But if you keep using these words, you might not get the good outcomes. But please make sure this does not mean do not get a diagnosis, because early detection is really key. And what they've seen for African Americans, we get late diagnosis. And then by that time, anything that you can put in place to help improve the quality of life or the medications, it's too far gone.
Right.
Yeah, and you've been through this journey all alone by yourself, and you wait until the end. So that's why the memory screenings early on is really good to get if you're 65 and older. You just get part of your wellness visits. And I'm under 65, and I still had a memory screening because I wanted to know my baseline. So you don't have to wait until you get 65. And we want to let y'all know that Alzheimer's disease, dementia, these memory changes don't happen when you get 65.
Exactly.
There are people.
Can I make one? Oh, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
No, and one thing that I think is so good about starting and consistently getting memory tests is that you become your own control. So let's say in 2010, you had a memory exam and you scored in the high range. And then in 2012, you got another one and you're still in the high range. And then in 2018, you see that you're now in a lower range. It gives a gauge for a provider to see over time, oh, these are some areas where this person is declining, versus saying, well, I've never had a memory test and I'm coming in 2018. And so it's harder for a provider to diagnose it. But if you consistently get them done, it's easier that way.
Yeah. And so I think, Bia, there was a question about this is perfect, going into that accuracy question.
All right.
Go ahead,
So, yeah, the question is, Jackie alluded to her friend or family member being diagnosed with Alzheimer's, but it in turn ended up being vascular dementia. How would families know if the care receiver was diagnosed incorrectly? This is the first part of the question. And then the second part is to help us understand how important accuracy is. Please give us an example of how a plan of care might be different for someone with Alzheimer's disease versus someone with dementia. And is there a true difference in their care planning at all?
So I'll just talk about our journey. The signs and symptoms that Uncle Robert was experiencing were not in alignment with what we were hearing in the literature from Alzheimer's. They were sounding more like the symptoms and signs under vascular dementia. And so we just asked the question. The medications that they were using that were effective for individuals living with Alzheimer's type agitated him, and they did not work for him. So we asked, could it be possible that he has a different type of dementia? And when he was diagnosed, it was diagnosed not from a person that specializes in dementia. So it was one of those things that, it's likely dementia and Alzheimer's is the most prevalent one that we hear about. The doctor had been educated on that and just kind of led them down that trail. But, as Dr. Johnson said, if you start getting the memory assessments and just doing those mini mental tests early enough, and you start seeing the change, and your doctor has really a broad set of understanding where the patient is, you can begin to mete out the differences. But someone on the care partner team, we've challenged the healthcare partner. Hey, can you see if it might be something else? Because we're not seeing what's evidence in this diagnosis. Let's try to see and unveil if there are other things that it could be. And the beauty of it is that, now remember, what you all don't know is that Uncle Robert was in New York, left New York, went to Virginia. And so he didn't have a medical home. Then he was now in Atlanta, right? So all of his documents hadn't followed him, but because of our experience as care partners, we were able to bring it to light. Let's check some other things.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. I think for this webinar, we didn't go into detail on the different types of dementia and giving the patho behind them. And with that being said, is that what makes how the disease progresses different based on what's going on. But, not to confuse you, but a person can also have mixed dementia, where it's a combination of Alzheimer's, vascular dementia, Lewy body. So it's really complicated. That's why it's very important to work with your healthcare provider to find out what could this be? And knowing a patient's history is very important. And so someone asks, what is the definition of vascular dementia? And I think this is really important, where they put in vascular changes in the brain, which are often related to the diagnosis of high blood pressure, stroke, and diabetes. So if this person has been going through for the past 20 years, uncontrolled hypertension, having multiple strokes, and then at age 62, you start seeing where they're more forgetful now and things like that, that history is very important to that provider, because then that can direct them to, this person probably has vascular dementia. And so those signs and symptoms that you report to the provider is very important. Paying attention to someone's gait, even things like that. If you see they're more frustrated with certain music or noises, that might be more with the Lewy body. So it's very important to present these signs and symptoms. And Mia always say with the vascular dementia, the progression is usually like going downstairs, right? And so with Alzheimer's disease, you might see the progression like this, where vascular dementia, you go down the stairs, so you might see a decline, and then they'll stay right there on that stair. And each person is different, and then you'll see a decline again. So it just varies. And again, it's so important to work with your provider. I do want to acknowledge, I know that we're over time, but we do have a couple more questions. And if our panelists maybe just have 5 or 10 minutes to stay on, if not, we will stay on to try to address some of these questions.
All right, so our next question is, what are, and I think this is directed towards you, Jackie, what are your experiences with adult day centers, and what questions should you ask when considering using this as a resource? And I'm sure both or all of our panelists can chime in on this.
Sure. Adult days are regulated by, it's called Healthcare Facility Regulation Division. You want to make sure that they are licensed. Adult day, and there are 2 types. There's adult day services, which is a more social model, and there's adult day health, which are for typically the setting that you would want for someone who is mid or late stage dementia. Or it might be best to start them in adult day early stage, so that they're in an environment they can get comfortable with, get used to, and familiar with as they progress in their diagnosis. You want to make sure that the place, when you walk in, just the aroma, you want to see that they're engaged. Everyone isn't like literally just lined up and sitting in their chairs doing nothing. You want to make sure that they are being engaged and stimulated. Now, some folks may not be able to engage back, but their eyes can tell you if they're engaged, because maybe they're in late stage, or they may, that particular sound that they make, that you know that they're enjoying themselves. Like Tanya's dad would say, when things were good, he'd just say, and you knew that meant he was having a good time. So you want to make sure that it is licensed, number one, that it is clean, that folks are engaged. And I think that what's important is that when you find that your loved one goes on a visit first, you don't want to sign up for anything right off the bat. Ask them if you can do a week of respite. Let them test out and see if they're, having a good time with the people that are care partners, as well as other people that are actually engaged and that are peers there for that experience. So those are some of the things that I would recommend.
Okay, great. And I'll also say, I just want to add there that, interviewing or talking to other care partners is a wonderful idea too, because they can give you the real answers that you might be seeking. And we always say with different assisted living communities, and I think it goes for respite too, to drop in when you're not scheduled to be there, just to get an idea of what's going on. So we had several questions in the chat, and it looks like both Dr. Bonds Johnson answered, and as well as Kay, about information on adult day centers through AARP. So I think that brings us to the end of our program. If there are no more questions for today, I just wanted to thank you all for joining us. And I know both Dr. Bonds Johnson and Jackie listed or told us about some important information, but one of the things I picked up was make the decision to delegate. And I think that is really important in your care partnership, is saying, I can do this, but I don't need to do everything. So we want to empower you all to feel like you have the opportunity to tell others what needs to be done, and that they're willing to help you. Also know that there are many resources available to you. I want to remind you that the Alzheimer's Association is another resource available, which can help you with answering questions with adult day centers, physicians, and a plethora of things. So that number is 1-800-272-3900. We've also listed some of the different resources in the chat, so you can click on those links as well. And we hope that you all will join us in January for our next program on brain health with Dr. Vanetta Dotson of Cerebral Fit. And we'll get the year started off right with our brain health program. So I wanted to see if Dr. Epps has any final remarks before we wrap up.
Yes, I do. Of course, I always do. I just, again, want to thank everyone. I want to thank the panelists and also the attendees and those that were able to stay over the hour and a half. I really appreciate you taking out time this morning. I hope you gained some great knowledge, and please be sure to connect with us and look for the follow-up emails so we can add you to our newsletter distribution list and the other things that we have going on. And please, we're looking forward to the things that we'll be doing in 2021. So be on the lookout for that. And I really hope this information has been helpful. And please feel free to share with your family, your friends, your coworkers, anyone, even if they listen to 5 or 10 minutes, that's 5 or 10 minutes of information that they'll have that they didn't have before. So thank you all again. Happy holidays. Please take care, stay well, stay safe. And I look forward to connecting with you all in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.